Imagine this, a football club's fan base so desperate to reclaim their sacred home ground that they launched their own political party and actually won. This isn't some Hollywood script. This is the incredible true story of Charlton Athletic, a club that has stared down bankruptcy and refused to fold. A club that endured 7 long years of forced exile and survived an ownership that nearly demolished a legacy that generations of fans had painstakingly built. Yet, through every dark and desperate chapter in their history, one singular dream never faded away. The dream of transforming the Valley into a 40,000-seat fortress, a modern cathedral of football truly worthy of this club's epic story. That vision wasn't just a fantasy. It was once approved by the city council with the funding completely secured. But then, a single season of bad results on the pitch was all it took to kill the project dead in its tracks before a single foundation stone was ever laid. Now, for the first time in almost 20 years, that impossible dream is roaring back to life. The team is fighting its way up, back in the championship. The ownership group is finally stable, and the master plan to evolve the Valley from its current 27,111-seat capacity, a venue effectively frozen in time, is now aggressively moving forward. But make no mistake, the road that lies ahead is a minefield far more complex and dangerous than it appears on the surface. The man who nearly drove this club into the ground still legally owns the stadium itself. The bureaucratic wars with city planners are guaranteed to be brutal. And the club's own history is a painful, glaring reminder of just how quickly everything can fall apart at the Valley when momentum shifts and things go wrong. Can Charlton finally build the modern palace their long-suffering supporters so richly deserve? It's time to find out. The Valley has been Charlton's soul and home since 1919. It was born from an abandoned chalk pit in southeast London, with fans literally volunteering to clear the land and construct their stadium by hand. In its heyday, it was a cauldron of passion, packing in over 75,000 fans, making it one of the largest and most intimidating grounds in the entire country. But a government safety crackdown came down like a hammer, slashing the capacity from 66,000 down to a mere 20,000, almost overnight, after subsidence problems rendered the East Terrace structurally unsafe. The club was already walking a financial tightrope, and there was simply no money in the coffers to make the necessary repairs. Then came the horrific Bradford City fire tragedy. In 1985, a disaster that ignited a nationwide overhaul of stadium safety regulations all across England. The Valley failed its safety inspection completely. Charlton was kicked out, forced into a humiliating ground share at Crystal Palace's Selhurst Park. With no one left to care for it, the Valley decayed with shocking speed. The pitch became a jungle of weeds, the turnstiles rusted solid. The hallowed ground that had once thundered with the voices of 75,000 people was reduced to a derelict wasteland in the middle of southeast London. When the club finally mounted an effort to return and renovate in 1988, they hit a brick wall. The Greenwich Borough Council rejected their planning application outright, so the fans did something absolutely unprecedented in the history of English football. They went to war with the political establishment by forming their own political party. The Valley Party ran in the 1990 local council elections on that single powerful issue and captured nearly 15,000 votes across the borough. The public pressure became impossible for the politicians to ignore. The council caved. They reversed their decision, and on December 5th, 1992, Charlton came home. A 7-year nightmare in exile was brought to an end not by wealthy owners, but entirely by the fans themselves. Throughout the 1990s, the stadium was steadily rebuilt, and then came the golden age, the Premier League years. Between the years 2000 and 2007, Charlton battled in the top flight of English football for 7 consecutive seasons. And during that glorious period, the club officially submitted the planning applications to finally expand the Valley into a 40,000-plus seat modern arena. The blueprint was bold: completely rebuild the Jimmy Seed stand and add a colossal second tier to the East stand. The Greenwich Council approved it. This was no longer just a concept or a pipe dream. This wasn't some pipe dream sketched on a napkin. It was a fully realized City Hall-approved expansion project, backed by solid, tangible funding. But the dream shattered in 2007 when the club was relegated and the entire vision vanished before the first shovel ever broke ground. The colossal river of Premier League television money dried up in an instant, and with it, the ambitious blueprints for a 40,000-seat fortress were quietly slid into a drawer, destined to collect dust and forgotten until this very moment. What followed that devastating relegation was nearly 15 years of chaos and crippling instability. Then, in January 2014, a Belgian businessman named Roland Duchalet purchased the club for approximately £14 million. He operated Charlton not as a cherished community asset, but as a component in a portfolio, a network of 5 clubs he owned simultaneously across Europe, in Germany, Spain, Hungary, Belgium, and England, cynically rotating players between them like parts on a factory production line with little to no regard for what Charlton actually needed to succeed. The heart of the club was being ripped out. Attendance figures plummeted by over 5,500 fans during his ownership. The team was embarrassingly relegated to League One in 2016, and not a single meaningful pound was ever invested into the Valley during his entire 6-year reign of neglect. The response from the supporters was a furious uprising, an organized rebellion unlike anything seen at an English football club in a generation. The coalition against Roland Duchâtelet, or CARD, organized relentless and creative protests inside and outside the stadium week after week. In an incredible show of defiance, over 200 fans traveled all the way to Belgium to demonstrate right outside of his hometown. The fan-led campaign raised over £50,000, lobbied the EFL directly, and even held meetings with officials at the Belgian embassy in London. The pressure was relentless, and eventually it worked. By 2019, Duchalet was finally gone. But in a final act of spite, when he sold the club, he kept personal ownership of the Valley. The new owners who followed bought the club for just £1, made grand promises of millions in investment, delivered absolutely nothing, and left Charlton teetering on the brink of losing their English Football League status for good. That nightmare finally ended in July of 2023, when a group known as SE7 Partners secured a long-term lease on the Valley, extending all the way through to the year 2040, bringing a new dawn of hope. Model. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, Charlton Athletic finally holds the keys to its own future. The ambitious blueprint for a 40,000-seat fortress, a plan once approved by the council only to be abandoned after a heartbreaking relegation, is now aggressively back on the agenda. And with their triumphant promotion to the championship confirmed in May of 2025, the sense of urgency behind this dream has never been more palpable. So, what is the grand vision being forged for the Valley, and what could this historic stadium realistically become in the coming years? For the first time in a generation, the entire narrative surrounding Charlton Athletic has been rewritten, shifting dramatically from a story of survival to one of pure, unadulterated ambition. And what is being engineered for? The Valley is without exaggeration one of the most electrifying stadium sagas unfolding in English football at this very moment. The vision is not to relocate, but to reborn the Valley from within its own hallowed ground. Inside the same chalk pit that has been the soul of this club since 1919, the plan is to elevate the capacity from a modest 27,111 all the way to a thunderous 40,000 seats. An expansion of that magnitude would immediately catapult it into the ranks of the largest stadiums in the championship, restoring a scale and an intimidation factor this ground has not known for decades. But make no mistake, this is not merely a project about adding more plastic seats. This is a fundamental reconstruction, a stand-by-stand revolution intended to completely transform the very essence of the Valley, how it looks, how it sounds, and how it operates as a modern cathedral of sport. Before we get to the breathtaking scope of the expansion, let's quickly take stock of what has already been accomplished. Over the past 2 summers, the new ownership has injected more capital into the Valley's infrastructure than any previous leadership group in over 20 years. A new Premier League grade hybrid pitch has been laid. State-of-the-art LED floodlights that turn night into day have been installed. The club has invested in one of the most expansive digital screen platforms ever fitted inside a British football stadium, and a brand new fan zone has sprung up outside the West Stand, complete with a 3-on-3 football pitch. Every single one of these investments is a powerful statement of intent, a down payment on a much larger promise, and they are only the beginning. The centerpiece, the absolute linchpin of this entire transformation, is the Jimmy Seed Stand, the oldest and most dated structure at the Valley. It's a single-tiered relic holding just 3,469 seats, and it still boasts a primitive supporting roof pillar that physically obstructs the view for fans sitting behind it. It looks like a relic from a bygone era, and for years it has held the entire stadium's potential hostage. The proposal is nothing short of a complete demolition and a total rebuild. In its place, a modern 2-tiered masterpiece will rise, a design that completely removes that archaic pillar. This will open up perfect, unobstructed sightlines from every single angle and welcome thousands of additional supporters into a roaring South End. This one reconstruction on its own would be the single most significant transformation the Valley has ever undergone, but there's more. Then you have the 2 open corners. Right now, those gaps act like vents, allowing the noise to escape, bleeding the raw energy out of the stadium, and preventing the atmosphere from ever reaching its true terrifying potential. Enclosing both of those corners would finally connect all 4 stands into a single continuous enclosed structure for the very first time, creating the kind of intimidating cauldron that visiting teams will genuinely dread walking into. And this goes far beyond just creating an electric atmosphere. Those crucial corner sections will be designed to house additional seating premium hospitality areas and lucrative commercial spaces, turning what was once empty air into a revenue engine that works every single week of the year. The third major phase of this evolution is the East Stand. In a masterful act of foresight, when this stand was originally constructed, its foundations were deliberately over-engineered, built specifically to support a full second tier on top, making this one of the most structurally logical upgrades available. That second tier would deliver thousands of additional seats, a sleek, redesigned roofline, cutting-edge media facilities, new executive boxes, and a class of premium club-level seating that right now simply does not exist as an option at the Valley. Because at its core, this expansion is about so much more than just sheer capacity. Currently, the Valley generates a mere fraction of the commercial revenue that its peer clubs in the championship bring in. A rebuilt Jimmy Seed Stand enclosed corners and a new second tier on the East Stand would unlock substantial new real estate for upscale hospitality lounges, destination restaurant and bar facilities, modern corporate boxes, and versatile conference spaces, transforming the Valley into a 7-day-a-week entertainment and business venue, not just a stage for match days. To bring this vision to life, the club has already retained Trivandi, one of the planet's foremost stadium consultancy firms, to hammer out the full long-term strategic plan for this monumental transformation. But building a dream of this magnitude costs serious money. So what is the financial reality? And more pointedly, what is the fate of Charlton if this game-changing expansion doesn't actually happen? This is where the story gets truly compelling and perhaps a little uncomfortable for the skeptics. SE7 partners are funding this entire expansion through 100% private investment with no public money and absolutely no taxpayer subsidy involved whatsoever. We are talking about an estimated £80 to £120 million deployed intelligently across calculated phases as the club's revenues grow in lockstep with its success on the pitch. And that strategic phased approach is genuinely one of the most financially sound and sustainable expansion models you will find anywhere in English football today. While no official construction date has been set in stone and the club has yet to make a formal public announcement, the timeline when you begin to piece together the clues is actually becoming quite clear. The Jimmy Seed Stand rebuild is the undeniable first priority, with a window somewhere between 2026 and 2028 emerging as a realistic timeframe for that colossal work to finally begin. Inside the club, the grand ambition for a 40,000-seat fortress is inextricably linked to one single goal: a triumphant return to the Premier League. If they pull it off, the timeline for completing this massive project points somewhere toward the early or mid-2030s. After wandering in the wilderness for 2 decades, there's a powerful sense that the club is finally undeniably heading in the right direction. As it stands today, Charlton's annual revenue is a modest £8.8 million. But imagine a transformed 40,000-seat arena, complete with luxury hospitality suites, high-dollar corporate boxes, and lucrative naming rights. That dream stadium could catapult their earnings toward £20 million per year, and that's just while competing in the second-tier championship. The real game changer, however, is the moment Premier League soccer walks back through the door. A league where the television broadcast deals alone inject a staggering minimum of over £100 million into each club every single season. At that point, the stadium expansion is no longer a matter of if it will happen, but simply a race against the clock to see how fast it can be built. Yet, before a single shovel can break ground, a massive dark cloud hangs over this entire ambitious project, an issue that frankly isn't getting nearly enough attention. The stadium, the Valley, is still the legal property of its former owner, Roland Duchâtelet. In an almost unheard-of move, he held on to the outright ownership of the physical land and buildings when he sold the football club itself. And that single fact creates a truly bizarre and precarious situation, especially when you consider the scale of the legacy-defining project Charlton is now attempting to undertake. A £50 million buyout agreement hammered out with a prior ownership group was incredibly never even paid. Later, another owner, Thomas Sandgaard, had his chance to purchase the grounds outright and ultimately chose to walk away from the deal. The current ownership SE7 Partners has managed to secure the club's future for the near term by extending the stadium lease all the way through 2040, which certainly eases some of the immediate pressure. But despite that breathing room, an inescapable and deeply uncomfortable truth remains. You simply cannot, under any sound business model, pour £100 million of investment into redeveloping a world-class stadium that is at the end of the day legally owned by somebody else. Securing the purchase of the Valley from Duchâtelet isn't just another business deal. It is the single most critical off-the-field challenge this club faces. And this is where Charlton's story elevates into something truly unique in the annals of English football. Back in 2013, the Charlton Athletic Supporters Trust orchestrated a brilliant move. They collected exactly 1,905 signatures, a number deliberately chosen to honor the year the club was founded to officially designate the Valley as an asset of community value. What this powerful legal status means is that if the stadium is ever put on the market, the supporters themselves must be officially notified and given a fair opportunity to assemble a competing bid before any other potential buyer can close a deal. Just think about that. A fan base so dedicated that it created its own legal shield to protect their home ground using the very year of their club's birth as the symbolic number of signatures required. That one small, brilliant detail tells you absolutely everything you need to know about the sacred bond between Charlton Athletic and the Valley. So what makes this moment right now fundamentally different from all the failed attempts that came before it? Consider the last time an expansion plan collapsed. It was after the devastating relegation in 2007, a time when the club had absolutely no long-term lease security for its own home. Back then, the club's ownership situation devolved into a toxic mess, and a single disastrous season was all it took to bring the entire dream crashing down overnight. Today, the picture could not be more different. That crucial lease is now secure all the way to the year 2040. The ownership group is stable. The vital revenues from competing in the championship are finally flowing in. And on the field, a passionate fan base that witnessed just 2 home league defeats all season is generating precisely the kind of electric atmosphere and demand that makes a bigger Valley not just desirable, but an absolute necessity. So the question is, after all the false starts and all the heartbreak, do you believe Charlton can finally truly pull this off? Drop your answer down in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the business and drama of the beautiful game, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a like so you don't miss more incredible football stadium stories just like this one.